And we've got to push right side approaches. That's not getting talked about enough. I still see officers approaching vehicles on major roadways from the driver's side when they should absolutely be up on the curb or next to that passenger side talking to that driver.
You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from Lifeline, offering a holistic wellness approach focused on supporting American law enforcement, promoting resilience, safety, and survivability.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our third quarter webinar. As always, I have my team member, Anna Muckenfoos, here with me, who's going to help me through any technical details. Also with us, but not presenting, is our comrade from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Rio Nelson, who's a highway safety specialist with the Enforcement and Justice Services Division. I'll be doing all of the presenting today. So a couple things I just wanted to fill everyone in on. With a little bit of sadness, over the summer, we did not have a second quarter webinar because we did that traffic safety forum, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But over the summer, we lost a colleague, Hannah, whom I think you all may have known, Hannah Shula, who worked here for a number of years and was part of the Officer Safety and Wellness team. She probably communicated through emails with a lot of you, sending out information, sending out our OSW newsletter. So that was very sad for us to lose Hannah. She's a tremendous team member. And then recently, another former member of OSW, who some of you may have known or may not know, but his name was Larry Cecchetini, and he's retired from the Yolo County, California Sheriff's Department. But Larry was instrumental in being one of the people who put together a speed reduction, crash reduction program that won the very first Officer Traffic Safety Award for the Destination Zero Awards. I'll talk a little bit more about the Destination Zero Awards because there's one that applies specifically to traffic. And Larry and the Yolo County Sheriff's Office from California won the very first award in that category in 2015. And unfortunately, Larry passed away 2 weeks ago. But he was another great guy who worked very hard for the Memorial Fund and really believed strongly in the Destination Zero program and carried it forward for a number of years. So we were also sad to lose Larry. Anyway, let me get on with the presentation. I don't want to bring us all down. So today we're going to look at third quarter numbers, and I'll bring us completely up to date to where we are. And for those of you who follow these things, we had another fatality that occurred, I think, either yesterday or I guess it must have been yesterday down in Florida that I just added to our stats. So the information I give you today will be pretty up to date. So as you know, there's 24,412 names engraved on the memorial wall. And we have that process through which agencies that wish to add their member's name on the wall, they have to submit information, documentation, investigations, crash reports, all the things that we ask for so that we can review that line of duty death and determine that it meets our criteria. For those who do not know, we now are reviewing some suicides in a limited fashion based on some changes that occurred in 2020 and 2021. There was some rulemaking changes made at public safety officers' benefits programs to allow for officers under certain circumstances to receive benefits. And that then had us look at our criteria and develop a criteria for examining and accepting in very narrow scope some cases where officers decided to take their own lives. If you are familiar with the museum, this pickup truck is here. And the reason I'm mentioning it now, there is a new film out called Sovereign. And it is a story of a father and son who espouse the ideology of sovereign citizens and, don't like government intrusion. And it tells the story. It's loosely based on the true story of the West Memphis shootout where two police officers are killed, other officers are shot, and a Arkansas conservation officer uses this pickup, which you see here, which is in our museum, and you can see the bullet holes in the windshield and the crashed front right fender there, where the conservation officer named Michael Neal crashed into the minivan of the two sovereign citizens, or to the father and son, and then engaged in a hellacious fight with them. So it is sort of a key piece in our museum, something that absolutely helps tell the story of law enforcement and how brave our men and women are who address these threats that are out there. So I think it's streaming now. Probably cost you some money to watch it, but I just thought it was an interesting fact regarding that pickup that we have on display here. So I mentioned the traffic safety forum. Sorry for the grainy photo, but that's on purpose because I want you to see that we honored John Marshall. And if you don't know who John Marshall is, he worked for NHTSA. He was and is a tremendous friend and advocate for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. And in July, we decided to do another forum, and what we wanted to do in this forum was, instead of reciting all the facts the way we kind of always do and identify the problem, we sort of got to the point where we knew what the problem was. We wanted to hear from leaders about what they want to see done to make changes. But in this process, we did give an award to John Marshall, and it is called the John Marshall Award. So it's an annual eponymous award that we're going to give out in his honor in recognizing an advocate for traffic safety. Anybody who has a good idea as to who might be deserving of that, please send me an email. I'll put my email up at the end of this. But certainly John Marshall, who's been a tremendous friend to the Memorial Fund. And I know Troy, who's in the photo, who presented the award to John, was very proud, and John was proud to receive it from a trooper. And as John said, once a trooper, always a trooper. And he certainly was very proud of his, and is proud of his law enforcement service with the Virginia State Police. In that forum, we heard from a lot of leaders. We heard from members of NLRS, the National Law Enforcement Roadway Safety Program. Dave Flory was on a panel, Chief Flory, as well as Noel Marsh, who's an ambassador and retired chief and a professor at the University of Maine, who spoke quite candidly on issues. We had folks from Below 100 present. We had some new technology guys present pieces, AccuSensus, with this distracted driver detection system presented, as well as our friend Todd Lease, who is helping us learn about Penn Start, which you've heard me talk about. And you're going to hear more about Penn Start as that new training and testing center gets developed. And we also had a tremendous presentation from a detective from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department who had to investigate the double fatality of two Nevada state troopers within the city limits of Las Vegas. And he took us through an incredible investigation into determining who that individual, that it was a hit and run, who that striking vehicle driver was, and also proving that he was really impaired. And no pun intended, but I mean, he really put the nails in the coffin for that case, and that guy is behind bars. All of it is available. We should have links to it. If not, send me an email and I'll get you a link to those presentations. It's quite lengthy, so we recorded a smaller recap between Matt Garcia, Troy Anderson, and myself, where we include highlights of what was covered and what speakers said during the forum. So that's not 4.5 hours, that's only about an hour. So I mentioned our Destination Zero Awards. These were held in September, just at the end of last month. These are annual awards that we have where not only do we give out the National Officer Safety and Wellness Awards, but we also give out the Officer of the Month Awards, which we do every month here. But for Destination Zero, this is a big program that continues to gather information and data on some of the best things that agencies are doing to keep their officers safe, to keep them fit, to keep them mentally fit and well as tactical safety and traffic safety. So there are 5 categories, and I'll show you who the winners were. I just used their patches this time, but Madison, Connecticut won comprehensive safety. Newport Beach won Officer Wellness. Independence, Ohio, I think they were a two-time winner. They won Comprehensive Wellness. Smithfield, Virginia won for Officer Traffic Safety. And then Morton Grove, Illinois won for General Officer Safety. And I'm not sure if they're up on our website yet, but you can go to our website and see the videos for each one of these programs. They're just 2 or 3 minutes that explain to the viewer what they were doing, what they're thinking, and what programs they instituted. And I guarantee you, they're just great ideas that will have you, if you're in law enforcement, be like, well, damn, why don't we do that? Or hey, maybe we should look at that. So DZ is on our webpage under our Officer Safety and Wellness tab. So also during that event, Below 100, we now partner with Below 100. And if you see in that photo, you see, let's see if you can see my mouse. This is John Wetzel, quite a famous man in traffic safety, chairman of the National Sheriff's Association's Traffic Safety Committee for a long time. Here's Chief Dave Flory. There's John Marshall, Noel Marsh, and a bunch of other folks who attended from local law enforcement agencies who attended our training that day. So we continue to have a partnership with Below 100 and assist them in going out to doing trainings. And if you're interested in getting a training done, you can reach out directly to them or reach out to us, and we'll get it to them and get it coordinated so we can get training, their valuable training out to those who would like it. We were just at IACP in Denver. I unfortunately was not. I actually kind of got ill in September and was not able to travel in mid-October. I'm, all back to good now. But so we had a booth at IACP, and I understand it was a very fruitful IACP with a lot of folks stopping by our booth. And of course, there we talk about our programs. We talk about Safe Leo, we talk about Destination Zero, and we talk about all of our safety initiatives with NHTSA. So there's a lot always going on here at the Memorial Fund and in our Officer Safety and Wellness program. All right, so let's get back into the numbers. And this is where we ended last year. It just kind of, I feel like it's been a little while since I've done this, and like to get everybody's sort of head together about what's what in terms of the statistics. And that's really one of the main things that I do here, is to try and keep track of numbers and then the circumstances within those numbers so we can explain to the field how those officers died. And then, of course, take that information and change it so we can prevent some of these things. So last year we ended up with 46 line of duty deaths that were traffic related. And there's an asterisk next to those because the official count from the Memorial Fund, because of the way we have to catch certain deaths, didn't count it as traffic, but I did, and I'll tell you why. One involved a vehicle that crashed into the water, but the officer didn't die from the crash, he drowned. But because it was a vehicle-related incident and the deputy actually did drown as a result of crashing into the water, I added it as a traffic-related because, that's something we need to know about. How did that crash occur? How did that deputy drive off the boat ramp? And then the other one was an older case involving a Chicago officer who was injured in a crash back in the 80s. And of course, the cause of death was listed differently than related to auto because he survived for a number of years. But the direct and proximal cause of his death was the result of him being in a crash all those years ago. And he had a traumatic brain injury and some other ailments that ultimately, I think, led to his death. But that's kind of some of the into the weeds a little bit, but I wanted you to know why the numbers may or may not match sometimes when you look at what I'm counting for traffic-related fatalities. One thing I have to remind everybody on, and it's one of the big things we harped on in the forum, it's one of the things we still harp on, and I'll be very interested to see how things are at the end of this year. But in 2024, just for those vehicle crash cases in 2024, 56% of officers in those crashes that were fatal were not wearing their seatbelt. This is something that has to change. It absolutely saves lives. I've said it 1,000 times. Everybody knows it, but we have a real problem. And I think it comes from the top down a lot of times where people don't set the example. Field training officers don't set the example. Other officers don't set the example. And officers are just hyper aware of being trapped in their vehicle in a shooting and not thinking about the likelihood of being in a crash versus the likelihood of you having to be in that position. The crashes are much, much, much more likely to happen, and the seatbelts save your lives. All you got to do is practice getting out of that belt or disengaging and getting out of that situation. So this is our third quarter review. So this is where the numbers were at the end of September. But we're already here at October 29th. And as you see, we're about 43% lower than we were at this quarter in 2024. I mean, it's all good news. The numbers are down in every category, firearms related as well as traffic related. Here's year to date. And I updated this today because we had a West Palm Beach motorman go down yesterday morning. Was listed in critical condition, but I was told that he died this morning. So he is already up on some of the websites. And if you hit any of the news sources like Police One or Officer.com or any of the ones that you may follow, you'll see that there's a story about this motorman. No idea the circumstances yet that led to the crash, but I will tell you, and you'll see when we go over the numbers, motorcycle crashes for whatever reason are way up this year. And that's unusual. I think one of the highest years I remember is just 4, and we've already had 6 this year. So you see where we are now. We're 27% below for traffic related, 16% for the firearms. Those shootings are starting to creep up there. Overall, we're 40% down. And for our friends at below 100, I think this is important because, it's very likely we could get under 100 cases this year. And I know people are like, hey, rookie, shut up. Don't say anything. Right? Like when the rookie says, it sure is quiet. It's not that I want to jinx it or not, but it's something we're looking at. And we're hoping that we actually do get below that number and see a downward trend that we hopefully contribute to across all of the different types of incidents, firearms, traffic related, and other. So let's look at the 2025 incidents, and I'll tell you what I've seen so far with all the information I gather. We've had 10 automobile crashes, 2 of which were single vehicle crashes. And I highlight, if you follow these, I always highlight single vehicle crashes. Like seatbelts, it's one of the things we want to really focus on because they're preventable, right? A single vehicle crash that's usually the result of speed and a curve or sometimes distracted driving by the officers are preventable. There's an asterisk next to this single vehicle crash category because a deputy returning home in Mississippi ran into some horses and turned into a fatal crash. He was in his marked unit, end of his shift, going home. If you're in a marked car headed home, we consider that coming and going, and you're still recognizable as a law enforcement source. You're still a deterrent, all those things. And on a dark road, some horses had gotten out from a farm, and this officer crashed into, I believe, 2 of the horses, and that ended up being a fatal crash. And again, so that's a little unusual to count as a single vehicle crash. It's, really a collision with an animal. But to have one single vehicle crash so far this year is good news. Normally by now, and I did a little analysis for our friends at below 100, the average by this point in our year in Q3 and through part of into Q4, we usually have 4 or 5 single vehicle fatalities of deputies, officers, troopers, whoever rushing to scenes and losing control of their car. This year, we've only had 1, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. 12 struck by crashes, that's really where we need to focus our efforts. I'm not saying the automobile crashes and the single vehicle crashes aren't important. They are. Some of these automobile crashes are not the result of an officer's fault. There's very little they can do. Others are. But the struck by crashes, as you know, and you'll hear me say, a large number of them occur on crash scenes that are already existing. We just had one in California of Officer Craven, who was struck and killed when she stopped to help at a crash scene. And then we'll get into it a little bit more, but the struck by crashes, those numbers are up. So in the fatal automobile crashes so far in 2025, 5 of the crashes occurred while officers were on patrol. And I will tell you that 3 of those crashes involved officers hitting other stopped vehicles. 2 involved rear-ending semis, and 1 involved a sort of sideswipe crash, and it looked like, again, the officer actually ran into the back or side of this stake-bodied truck. So without having a whole lot of information, seems like there might have been some distraction there when these three rear-end essential crashes occurred. Two of the crashes involved officers who were involved in a pursuit. One was responding to a call. One was assisting a motorist when they were in their car when the crash occurred. So that vehicle that struck this officer while he was pulled over the side of the road, but in his cruiser, will go down as a violation, slow down and move over. And of course, one of the things we want to remind officers is that when you're in your car on the side of the road, whether it's with a stop, a crash scene, or assisting a motorist, put your seatbelt on because it definitely saved this officer's life. And then one was on his way home. He was returning to work when he had that crash. And I think that's the one that I mentioned with the horses. So there's still, I think, a study going on with Melanie Stefanik, or Melanie Fowler, excuse me, who is doing the seatbelt study. If you send an email to mstefani@mix.westvirginiauniversity, wvu.edu, she's interested if any officers wanted to participate in a survey. It takes about 20 minutes. It's completely anonymous, but it's about why you do or why you don't wear your seatbelt. What are your reasonings, and what do you do tactically if you're not wearing your seatbelt? So if anybody needs that email again, they can send me an email and I'll send it back out to you. But I believe she's still collecting data for her PhD. So again, struck by crashes, this was a real concern. There are 12 of them, but for the main focus, we had 3 who were killed on the scene of a crash. 2 were involved in the deployment of tire deflation devices. That's something else we focused on. And 3 were directing and diverting traffic. One of those was an intentional murder of that deputy by a man who had just been released. I think it happened in Ohio. He saw a law enforcement officer and just decided to run him over because he was mad at the cops. And so we've seen a little bit of that happening, a little bit more, it seems like, of intentional ramming of police vehicles, not by suspects who are getting away, but by individuals who are either trying to provoke law enforcement or are angry at law enforcement. So this will give you an idea. We ended last year with 17 struck by crashes. We had that low in 2023. And that high in 2021 of 27 really prompted us to try and do more to get the word out about TIM, traffic incident management, as well as blocking vehicles, as well as coordinating with towing and recovery in the fire department and EMS, and managing these scenes to make them as safe as possible, and so everyone's on the same page. One of the initiatives that we're working on now is we're going to develop, it'll live on our website, our Memorial Fund website, but we're going to create an interactive map where you could scroll over that map and it'll bring up the state slow down and move over law, so everyone will have an understanding of the difference from state to state, but it'll also highlight line of duty deaths associated with a violation of slow down and move over. And that's actually, according to the state's law, can narrow the criteria. So not every struck by that happens in the state is going to be a violation of slow down and move over. There's specific criteria that are required for it to be a violation of slow down and move over. And of course, if that then contributed to the death, we would then count it. So we had meetings about that with our friends at NHTSA yesterday, and then with our designers. So we're moving forward on that initiative. And I think we want to even add more details in there. So when someone scrolls over a state, they'll not just get the law and the names, but they can see some imagery that just shows how common this is with crushed trooper cars, crushed sheriff deputy cars, et cetera, with people not paying attention or impaired, slamming in to the back of the car that has all its lights on. It's almost inexplicable, but it happens every day. So I said we get into motorcycle fatalities. There were 4 in 2024 so far, and this number I didn't update, I apologize. It's 6. It's 6 as of today. Again, no circumstances on the West Palm Beach officer, but 2 of the officers that were killed in line of duty death crashes so far appear to have been engaged in escorts. And if you've ever heard me talk about one of the strongest circumstances that lead to motorcycle officer fatalities, it is when they were handling escorts, either funerals, parades, VIPs. They're out there running alongside of traffic. or getting ahead of it to cut and pull traffic, whatever it is they're doing. And, there's already a problem with motorists saying, I didn't see them, right? Motorcyclists. Hopefully everybody has daytime running lights. That headlight should be on. But escorts is one of the most common circumstances where motor officers get into trouble. And then there was another case where a motor officer, again, someone angry at law enforcement, this individual might have been being pursued by police, but he intentionally ran a motor officer over. By the way, in all of this, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll get to them. We're kind of getting down towards the end. So if you have any questions or had a question about what I said and have anything to put in there, just put it in there and I'll be happy to answer it. Or if you like, you can send me an email and I'll get you the information you need. So respondersafety.com, if you're familiar with the Cumberland Valley Volunteer Fire Department Volunteer Association. Those guys, Steve Austin and Jack Sullivan, are deeply involved in this, as well as Todd Lease, in tracking the national numbers for folks struck and killed on the highway who are essentially first responders or DOT workers. So as of their last report, and you can find it online at respondersafety.com, 20 responders and roadway workers have been struck and killed. I think this is one of the first years that law enforcement officers are leading the numbers, and normally towing and recovery is leading the numbers. And then we have 7 towing and recover, 1 fire EMS, and 2 DOT workers. And so those are the numbers that they're carrying as of the 29th. And as you're paying attention, you know that there are 2 additional law enforcement officers who were struck and killed that would later become part of that total under law enforcement officers. So as always, for NHTSA, we let them know where the crashes are occurring. It's unfortunately always been a choice between Region 4 or Region 6. Right now, Texas has had, I believe it's 7 law enforcement officers killed in traffic-related incidents. That state is by far leading any other state in the United States. And of course, Region 6 has had the highest number. They've had a death in Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, I think New Mexico, and Oklahoma. I think all those states have had a line of duty traffic-related death, I think. I don't have my sheet right in front of me. But so Region 6, again, is always, unfortunately, leading the way. We've been tracking stolen police vehicles, and the reason we track them is because they always lead to pursuits, and those can get nasty. And we want to reduce any number of pursuits we have. And, someone running around with a police car, which has happened, can easily carjack someone else and take their car, pull someone else over, wreak havoc, and of course has access to weapons, communications, munitions, tactical armor, all that stuff we have in our cars. So we've got to really do a better job at securing our police vehicles. A number of these cases, if you watch them or read about them, occur as the officer's getting out of the car, trying to make contact with someone, and they've left the car running or the keys in the car. In a couple of instances, they've left the car running and they've gone out to contact someone to say, hey, buddy, what's going on? And then the next thing you know, the officer's been pushed to the side and the person's jumped in their car and the chase is on. So it's something that we are trying to raise awareness about. There are switches that can be installed. There's a company that installs switches that will allow an officer to just set it. And then if a bandit gets in the car, they don't know where the switch is to allow the ignition to engage, either the ignition or for you to put it into drive, one or the other. So something, again, that we're looking at. So 2025 injury reports, I've been going through every day and pulling down whatever resources I can, going to a bunch of different news reporting agencies and getting local stories about police crashes as well as national stories. And we've got to push right side approaches. That's not getting talked about enough. I still see officers approaching vehicles on major roadways from the driver's side when they should absolutely be up on the curb or next to that passenger side talking to that driver. But in the 2025 injury reports, a lot of injuries are the result of pursuits. We're looking at some injuries where stop sticks were involved. and officers were critically or seriously injured by other police officers as they were trying to put stop sticks down in the road. And again, or I'm sorry, tire deflation devices, whatever brand of tire deflation device you might use. Trying to pull those spike strips up out of the roadway. Officers are still putting themselves in front of suspect vehicles to try and spike the tires. And that's just not the way to do it. That's how you get people hurt. So our key topics in traffic safety really haven't changed. And you see, if you know anything about below 100, how closely associated some of these things are. Wearing your body armor, wearing your seatbelts, remembering complacency kills, right? Remember what's important now, meaning have your head in the game. Tire deflation devices we've talked about. Training is really the one area where I don't know that agencies are doing enough. And you hear me say we train twice with our firearms every year. We should be training at least once on our vehicle policies and procedures and getting people out there on a track if you can. You might have to be inventive if you're a small agency to find a track where you can get somebody out or pair up with the state police, whatever you need to do to get your guys to make sure they're not getting into bad habits. One of the things I've seen, and if you watch a lot of these videos, which I do, it's amazing to me the number of videos I hear where officers are engaged in a pursuit and they still have their good time radio playing. I don't, if as if there isn't enough distractions in a patrol car with an MDC and a radio and you having to focus on your driving and all this other stuff, to have music blaring in the background while you're also talking to the dispatcher, I've seen it more than once and it was kind of strange to me. Anyway, so that's me. That's my email. Send me any thoughts, concerns you have. We'll do our fourth quarter annual wrap up, which will cover all the data. And I will have more information about seatbelts at that point, what 2025 looked like in terms of seatbelts, what 2025 looked like in terms of the overall circumstances for crashes, struck bys, things like that. And any other data that I come up with from this big search I'm doing on this new spreadsheet I've created for injuries. So I want to thank everybody for their time. Questions? No, we're good. Okay, must be a straightforward presentation, right? All right, thanks everybody for your time. I appreciate it. And again, any other things you want to ask, just go ahead and shoot me an email. Take care.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the precinct.